Peter Pan, Neverland, Nightmare. Yeah, I thought I was done with these movies, guys, because Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2 was a massive letdown for me. And I said it in that video that I was not going to watch any more of these dark, twisted childhood horror movies anymore. And I've broken that promise. And I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm a terrible reviewer. I know that. But anyways, here we are talking about Peter Pan, Neverland, Nightmare. And now there were a couple of reasons why I was curious to watch this movie. One, because I feel like out of all the public domain characters and stories that they could adapt into a horror take, that Peter Pan had the most potential to become a good, dark and twisted horror movie. Because just talking about the original animation for a second, just on surface value, it's about Peter Pan taking children out of their home and taking them to Neverland, to a place that may or may not exist. You know, that all in its own is dark and twisted. You know, and especially like as adults, you watch those animation movies and you see the more darker themes that they reach for. You know, as a kid, you were just like, oh, there's fairies, there's Peter Pan, there's Tinkerbell, there's all my favorite characters on screen. And now the second point is, you know, I was actually reading reviews on this movie and, you know, people were actually saying that it's pretty good, that it's the best out of the bunch so far, which isn't a long margin since we've only had the two Winnie the Pooh movies, which, you know, weren't the greatest in the world. But yeah, people were saying that, you know, that this one was actually, you know, pretty good. So, you know, I was curious to check this one out. So I watched it last night. And yeah, let's get into talking about the movies. I'm going to start off with a short synopsis for the film. So we follow a family in here. In particular, we follow the character of Wendy, whose brother gets abducted by Peter Pan. And she has to go far and beyond to rescue him from whatever dangers Peter Pan has in store for him. And now jumping into my positives and negatives of Peter Pan, Neverland, Nightmare. It's my first positive for this movie is this movie actually attempts to have a story, which the two Winnie the Pooh films weren't particularly good in that degree. It was more just showcasing, you know, the gore effects and showcasing these characters. This film at least has a story to it, and, you know, for like a B-grade type film, you know, this isn't going to be like an Oscar-winning story by any means, but, you know, it's a story nevertheless, and you know, and I thought it was a good story. It was a story that it doesn't have a lot of meat on its bones, but for what they're presenting, I think that the story here works fine. You know, it's investing enough where you want to see what eventually does happen. You know, they do have some cool twists and turns throughout the story. Like, the biggest thing for me watching this was the whole Neverland aspect. Is because, you know, the whole movie is kind of building this question of is there or isn't there a Neverland? And, you know, just that alone, you know, I was interested to see where they were going to go. I was interested to see how the third act was going to close. Yeah, as well as that, you know, there's some character drama and there's some family drama going on throughout the movie, you know, that I thought worked really well in here. So, you know, it's not the greatest story of all time, but no one expected it to be. But, you know, it's a story that works well for the story that they are telling. Now, my second positive for Neverland Nightmare is the characters here. I was absolutely shocked when I came out of this movie actually liking these characters. One character in particular, Wendy, you know, she's the loving and caring sister of the family. I think they do a really I think they set up her character really well in the first 10-15 minutes of this movie, where she volunteers to take her brother to school, as well as she works a day job as a hairdresser. There's some family drama going on on the side. So, her life is pretty packed, and, she does try to balance it all, but, she does play a very good part in the family story of this film. And that kind of carries over, all throughout the film, where once her brother does get abducted by Peter Pan, that she will not rest. She will go far and beyond to rescue her brother. And I think that's one thing I really dug about her character, is you really see that she wants this family to work, and I think she's trying to make it work the best way she can. So while there's not a lot of development given to her character, I thought that there was enough there in the setup for me to grab onto her character, and I think she proves herself not only as a character but also the actress who plays Wendy, as a satisfying final girl for this movie. I think her performance is really, really good in this movie. I think she gives a really strong performance, both in the emotional scenes and in the scenes where she does have to be very heightened. I think she gives a really good performance in the film. And now, speaking of performances, putting aside Wendy, all of the performances in this film I think are really, really good. And the standout here is being, I'm sorry, I am terrible with names here. I'm not even going to try. But the actor who played Peter Pan, I thought he crushed it in here. I thought he was intimidating. I thought he was scary. His character, Peter Pan, is definitely inspired by a few things in this movie, in particular Pennywise. You'll pick up on that in the first 5 minutes of this movie, that there's like literally a scene that is almost like a direct copy and paste of the opening of It, where Pennywise is in the drain. But I thought he was scary. I thought he was charismatic. I thought his energy for this role was really good. Like when he is chasing after people, it is quite terrifying for a few reasons, which I will get into in a second. But I thought his performance was the show stealer here. So props to him. I would love to see more Peter Pan, and from what I've heard, Peter Pan is going to be the main villain of this universe that they are setting up, and I hope that they keep the actor from this movie, because I think he knocks it out of the park. I'd love to see more of his character and his performance in here. And now, moving over to the big question, how is the gore in this movie? Is it satisfying? Yes, you bloody betcha. Like, the gore in this movie, man, I wouldn't say this is quite Terrifier level gore here, but it is so close. The gore in this movie is incredibly satisfying. There's limbs being cut off. There's people that are being scalped. There's people that are being stabbed. And it is so satisfying to see. And from what I know, that all of the kill scenes were practical, which just makes it that much more good to me. Practical effects over digital. I constantly say that on this channel, and this movie proves why practical effects are here to stay. Because these kill scenes, not only are they directed really well, they're also executed really well. They get the reaction that you're meant to have, like the whole kind of like, ill. You can't look at it, but you want to look at it because you want to see the final blow. You want to see what, you want to actually see what happens. It is really, really great. It is in your face. It's disgusting. It's disturbing. It is everything that you could possibly want. But, I'd say lower your expectations. This isn't Terrifier, but yeah, I'd say Terrifier 3, Terrifier 2, and then Peter Pan, and then the original Terrifier. So yeah, this is definitely up there for me. I think the production value, this time around, Blood and Honey 2 did show a little bit of promise in its production value. This movie definitely does have a heightened budget compared to the two Winnie the Pooh films, and you can definitely see on screen that that this movie does have a lot more money behind it. It's a lot more of a visually appealing film. It doesn't have like a dirty kind of grimy look to it. Like the film kind of does look like a professional horror production, which I really liked. I think the cinematography, I think that is really, really good here. Yeah, I think the lighting as well. They do some really cool stuff with the lighting and the cinematography, especially in the first few minutes and carrying over to all throughout the movie. I think that the movie is directed fairly well. This is directed by Scott Chambers, who's been basically running this entire universe from the start, and I think he does a pretty good job behind the directing chair making this movie. And now let's see what else. The story. I've already kind of talked about this, but the story in this, man, like, I like my horror movies, but my one restriction when it does come to a horror, like, this is more of just like a personal taste thing, but I really don't like when your whole story is based around killing kids and abducting kids. Like, that's just, I don't watch horror movies for that. I don't want to see, kids being tortured and tormented and being cut up. Like, I don't want to see that shit. So, like, this movie was very uncomfortable. It was very uncomfortable and very confronting in that regard. So I'd say just kind of know who you are going into this movie, because I think that will make a big difference to how you see this movie. I can 100% see why some people would not like this movie, 100%. But that's kind of the goal of this movie, though, is it is supposed to be disgusting. It is supposed to be disturbing. You're not supposed to like anything Peter Pan does. You're supposed to absolutely despise this guy by the final frame, or if you aren't on point by then, like in the first 10 minutes, you're supposed to absolutely hate this guy's guts, down to his core. This is an evil human being. Now moving on to my negatives for the movie, which I don't have many here, but one of my negatives for I Never Again Land is the character decisions. I can look past a lot of this, okay? I can look past a lot of this, but the character, especially Wendy, but even some of her friends throughout the film, make the most idiotic fucking decisions, man. Like, she escapes the house that Peter Pan is in, where he's killing people. She gets out alive, fully in contact. And then what does she do? She goes back into the house. Oh yeah, great fucking decision. Like, I understand your brother's in that house. I understand that. But like, can't you just like, I don't know, step away for a few minutes and like call the cops? I mean, if Peter Pan hasn't killed the kid yet, he's not going to kill the kid in like 5 minutes, while you're talking to the police. So, there's stuff like that where she just makes those decisions that and I'll 100% say, like, I'm not against characters making bad decisions, because situations like this where very much, the person is under a lot of stress and they're in a situation that really they don't have a lot of control over, your brain's not going to be kind of functioning. Your brain's not going to be functioning normally. It's going to be going like 1,000 miles an hour. And so, I can kind of look past a lot of bad decisions, but then there's just stuff in this movie that I just did not get. And there's storylines that aren't really concluded by the end. I think it's Joey. We have like two main little boys in this movie, and Joey gets out of the murderous house, and he gets away. You see him running away from the house, and then somehow the cops don't show up for like 20 minutes. Like, I understand, he would have to run back into town, but even with Joey's character, I'm like, one, I have no idea where you are at, and two, I highly doubt the character would know where he's at. He was put into a van, as if he would be able to see where Peter Pan is taking him. So, yeah, there's stuff like that, that I can look past, but it's stuff. It's stuff that's in the movie. So if bad character decisions can decrease the viewing experience for you, I would stay clear of that in here. Let's see. The ending is satisfying. I mean, it's kind of left open-ended. I feel like that they just could have maybe been a bit more kind of to the ending. There's character appearances at the end that I see why they're in here, but they just don't work. Like, you have, spoiler, but the movie's been out for a few months now, but you have Captain Cook, who shows up in the movie, and he's in here. I can't tell you to what degree he actually plays a part in it, but he's in the movie for probably about 2 minutes, and there's integral characters to this property that they should be doing more with. I understand it's probably more of like a setup, and they probably have like bigger plans for him, like Captain Cook's kind of whole story, his story is only first seen in like the last 2 minutes of the movie. But basically what they're kind of setting up is kind of Captain Cook getting revenge on Peter Pan. I think that's the storyline that they're going to be going with in the future, but I can't confirm that. I can just tell what I've seen. And yeah, there's stuff like that. I really dug what they did with Tinkerbell. Just to go back to the positives for a second, I really dug what they did. I thought this is not stuff I like to kind of talk about on this channel, but what the story that they do with Tinkerbell, I thought worked really, really well, and I thought it actually kind of added some realism to the situation, that they're into, to Peter Pan and Tinkerbell's chemistry, and Tinkerbell's arc. I really enjoyed how they set that up and what the closure of that storyline was. There's another character in here that I like that I mentioned before, Captain Cook. There's not a whole lot to his story, but the way that they kind of tie his character back to the beginning, I really dug that. So yeah, there's honestly quite a few things I enjoyed in this movie, and I did not expect this movie to win me back to this universe. But here I'm saying that this is you know, the best horror childhood horror, you know, childhood universe that, you know, that they're setting up, you know, that they're setting up here. And, you know, I'm really excited to kind of see where they actually take these characters if they decide to continue them on. But yeah, this is much better than Winnie the Pooh. There's, you know, I think they've heard a lot of that criticism, and I think they've definitely improved a lot of the problems I had with Winnie the Pooh 2. They've definitely improved on in here. And yeah, you know, this is just a movie you can kind of switch on and you can have fun with the blood. Even if you don't like the movie, stay for the movie, come for the gore, and I think you'll be satisfied. This is an absolute bloodbath, and it's an absolute blast, you know, from beginning to end. And, you know, I generally had a great time with this movie. Is this going to be one of my top 10 best movies of the year? No. But yeah, I had a really good time with Peter Pan, Never Again Land. So, let me know down in the comments, guys. Have you seen Peter Pan Neverland Nightmare? The name froze on me there for a second. And how would you rank these movies so far? You know, I know Bambi the Reckoning is out. At the moment, I'm seeing that tonight. Looking forward to that one. But yeah, let me know your ranking of this universe so far. And are you on board to see the Pooniverse final battle movie that they're setting up to? Let me know all of that down in the comment section down below, guys. So until next time, I will see you in the next video.